want to ask the chamber, or an official who wanted to ask a gas station, what do you think the most important things in Kingsport would be to include in such a print? And so Mom, gave him an answer. And of course the train station was one of them. Well, he came down here and he did the train station as it existed at that time, which if you can imagine looking over there and every other window missing, it was awful. And when he finished, and again, this is long before I knew I would ever work for the city, he came back and he said, because I happened to stop here and you gave me advice, I'm going to give you print number 1. So we got print number 1 of 300 of that. And I always keep it as a reminder because it was a real inspiration to me to not let that happen again on my watch to the best of my ability. So it was very motivational to me. Also, when I first came to work for the city, in the 1970s, 76-ish time period, Fort Henry Mall opened. And so many of the anchor stores left, and then many of the smaller stores that feed off the anchor stores went with it. And so people were desperate for something to happen downtown. And Lowe's Home Improvement was just coming on the scene. And they said, we'll build in Kingsport if you'll let us have a line of sight down Broad Street. And so as I say this, I still have a hard time believing this actually happened, but there used to be a Lowe's that sat right there. And the sign faced right down Broad Street. It's only half, not the whole, it was only half. But they had shifted the sign in the entrance over so that you could see Lowe's all the way down the Church Circle. And I just felt like that was, the epitome of when we lost our way and tried to start finding our way back. So this is 1914. This building, Bank of Kingsport, located right here. This building was, who remembers? It was one of the drug companies located right here. It just left me. But literally there was nothing. So they started from scratch and started putting together the plan. 1916, just one block over, which is now part of the parking lot for the Higher Ed Center, was the original big store. So when they built the town, they had to have a general store that you could buy stuff, and so that was the general store. And right behind it, which I meant to point out at the other intersection, was the improvement building. So in the 1990s, the city bought the improvement building, and they ended up moving our particular department, planning department, into that building. And I ended up eventually becoming assistant city manager for development. And so I ended up moving into an office, and one of the guys that used to work for J. Fred Johnson came in and said, this was J. Fred Johnson's office. I said, you gotta be kidding me. It was L.P. Gregory's who it was, if you remember him. And he said, he goes, I remember people would line up down the hall and wait their turn to see J. Fred Johnson. And they would come out with script for the store, like moms needed milk for babies or whatever. I mean, he truly was the father of Kingsport, just took care of everybody. And I always said, well, why did they put it was called the Improvement Building because it was the Kingsport Improvement Corporation. So think about that. It's the building that built, or the company that built Kingsport. So if they're trying to sell the prime lots on Broad Street, they're not going to put their office on Broad Street, they're going to put it out of the way. And if you'll also notice, it's one of the only buildings I know that's just a few feet higher than street elevation. Because when you look at this large flat area in the middle of the mountains, what does that usually mean? It means wetlands. It means it was marshy. It means there's probably a really good reason why the pioneers never built a city here, right? So they built that up so that there could be circulation of air underneath the building. Also of interest in that building is there's 4 vaults. And by the way, that building is going to become for sale, I'm pretty sure, soon. That was one of the buildings that was vacated for the new city hall. I'm sure hoping someone with an entrepreneurial spirit gets it and turns it into either offices or maybe lofts even. I could literally stand in the windowsill in my office upstairs and reach my arms up and still not touch the top of the window. That's how big the windows were. Because again, you have to think, that's before air conditioning, so they had to get circulation somehow. It's on the corner of Market and Shelby. This is 1916, again, looking that way, and you see all these little specks over here. Those are houses. Those are single-family houses. Single-family houses lined up and down Cherokee Street, Cumberland Street, and so forth. And there's some documentation of J. Fred Johnson riding a horse through there and it being just soppy wet. And think about the time people had pigs and chickens, and there was no sewer. And so they had to start making health rules about how many pigs you could keep and all that kind of stuff because it was becoming very unsanitary. And by 1928, this is what it looked like. And if you notice in this picture, there's that gap that was supposed to be Center Park. So in 1928, there were no buildings, so it was just confined to these few blocks and what was facing Main Street. All right, let's move on to the next. We'll go to Centennial Park. Oh, thank you, Kingsport Drive.